Aleppo, once Syria's largest city and a crossroads of trade and culture, has always stood at the heart of the nation's story. For centuries, its streets echoed with the sounds of merchants, travelers, and families from every corner of the region. The city's rich tapestry of history, woven from countless civilizations, made it a beacon of coexistence and resilience. Now, Aleppo is again at the center of conflict, its skyline marked by scars of war and uncertainty. The echoes of past battles linger in the air, as new tensions threaten to unravel the fragile peace that had only just begun to take root. Its ancient citadel and vibrant markets once symbolized unity among diverse communities. Here, Christians, Muslims, and Kurds lived side by side, sharing traditions and dreams. The city's soul was found in its bustling souks, where laughter and conversation filled the air, and in the shadow of the citadel, where generations gathered to celebrate life's milestones. After the fall of Assad's government in late 2024, hope briefly returned as a new administration began rebuilding. Streets once filled with rubble saw the first signs of renewal. Families returned to their homes, and the city's pulse quickened with cautious optimism. But peace was fragile, and beneath the surface, old wounds remained unhealed. Former allies now struggled to share power. Political factions once united against a common enemy found themselves at odds over the city's future. Disagreements over governance and representation deepened divisions, making compromise elusive. In January 2026, fighting erupted, not between old enemies, but between the new Syrian National Army and the Kurdish-led SDF. The city, still healing from years of devastation, was thrust back into violence as gunfire echoed through its neighborhoods. The clashes are fiercest in northern neighborhoods like Sheikh Maqsoud and Akrafia, home to many Kurds. These districts, once symbols of Kurdish self-governance and cultural pride, have become battlegrounds, their streets lined with barricades and fear. Years of Kurdish self-rule in these areas are now threatened. The removal of Kurdish flags from public buildings is a stark reminder of the shifting power dynamics and the uncertainty facing these communities. The renewed violence has shattered the city's delicate balance and reignited fear among residents. Families once again pack their belongings, seeking shelter from the chaos, while memories of previous sieges haunt their every step. Aleppo's future, and Syria's, hangs in the balance as the world watches, anxious that the city could spiral back into chaos. International observers and journalists flock to the city, hoping for signs of peace, but bracing for the worst. The question remains, can Aleppo's communities ever find lasting peace? Can old wounds be healed, and can trust be rebuilt among neighbors who have endured so much loss? The city's fate is once again a symbol of Syria's struggle. Its ruins and its resilience tell the story of a nation caught between hope and despair, between the promise of renewal and the threat of renewed conflict. The cycle of hope and despair continues, as Aleppo's people cling to the possibility of a brighter future, even as the shadows of war threaten to return. The violence that erupted in Aleppo was the direct result of the dramatic collapse of peace talks between the Syrian government and the Syrian Democratic Forces, or SDF. For months, the city had been a symbol of cautious hope, with both sides sitting down at the negotiation table, watched closely by the world. In early 2025, a historic agreement was announced. The SDF would be integrated into the National Army, a move that many believed could finally bring stability to the war-torn region. Yet, beneath the surface, deep mistrust and old wounds lingered, making real progress elusive. The SDF, representing a diverse coalition, but with a strong Kurdish core, demanded concrete guarantees for Kurdish rights, cultural recognition, and a degree of local autonomy. The government, however, was determined to reassert full sovereignty and central control, refusing to make concessions that might weaken its authority. As the negotiations dragged on for weeks, then months, suspicion and frustration grew on both sides. Each new round of talks seemed to end with more questions than answers, and the atmosphere in the meeting rooms became increasingly tense. Publicly, the government accused the SDF of deliberately stalling the process, while SDF leaders countered by accusing Damascus of negotiating in bad faith and refusing to address their core concerns. By January 2026, the talks had collapsed entirely. The negotiation tables were left empty, documents abandoned, and hopes for a peaceful solution faded into the background. The Syrian government, viewing the SDF's continued presence in Aleppo as a direct challenge to its authority, quickly mobilized its forces, and began moving military units into the city, setting up checkpoints and preparing for confrontation. In response, the SDF fortified their positions, preparing barricades and organizing patrols to defend their neighborhoods, bracing for the violence they feared was coming. With diplomacy exhausted, both sides turned to force. Armed clashes erupted across Aleppo's streets, and the city was once again plunged into chaos and conflict. The fragile hope for peaceful integration vanished overnight, replaced by the grim reality of street battles, destruction, and the desperate flight of civilians seeking safety. Aleppo's fragile peace was shattered, leaving behind only devastation and uncertainty for its people. Fighting erupted on January 6, 2026, in Aleppo's Kurdish-majority north. The Syrian army quickly seized Akrafiyeh and Bani Zaid, overwhelming SDF defenders. Checkpoints sprang up as government forces pressed their advantage. The military then declared Sheikh Maqsoud a closed zone, warning residents to stay indoors. Fear gripped the neighborhood as soldiers and armored vehicles moved in. The government aimed to end Kurdish self-rule in Aleppo once and for all. For the SDF, Sheikh Maqsoud was the last stronghold, and they prepared for a desperate defense. Civilians were trapped, caught between advancing troops and determined fighters. The battle for every street and building began, with thousands of lives at risk. The city braced for a brutal urban conflict. Aleppo's fate would be decided block by block. The renewed fighting has devastated Aleppo's people, leaving behind a city scarred by violence and uncertainty. Every street tells a story of loss, and every shattered window is a reminder of lives upended overnight. In just 5 days, at least 22 lives were lost, fighters and civilians alike. The toll is not just a number, but a collection of families torn apart, children orphaned, and communities left in mourning. Each casualty echoes through the city, deepening the collective grief. Both sides blame each other for civilian deaths, fueling anger and mistrust. The truth is often lost amid accusations, while ordinary people pay the highest price for the ongoing conflict. Over 140,000 residents have fled, abandoning homes and livelihoods built over generations. The exodus is a desperate search for safety, as families leave behind everything familiar, unsure if they will ever return. Many now live in makeshift shelters or out in the open, facing harsh conditions and an uncertain future. Nights are cold, food is scarce, and the fear of what comes next hangs heavy in the air. Those who tried to go back found their neighborhoods sealed off, forced to wait in limbo at checkpoints and roadblocks. The city they once called home is now a maze of barriers and suspicion. Families who had only recently returned to rebuild are now refugees again, forced to pack up what little they have left and start over. Their hopes for stability shattered once more. The cycle of displacement and loss continues, deepening the city's wounds. Each new wave of refugees adds to the sense of despair, as exhaustion and uncertainty become daily companions. For many, hope has given way to exhaustion and fear. Parents struggle to comfort their children, while the future remains clouded by anxiety and sorrow. The human cost is measured in shattered lives and broken dreams. Belongings left behind tell silent stories of families who once laughed and lived here, now scattered by war. Aleppo's suffering is a stark reminder of war's true toll. A city once vibrant, now reduced to ruins and silence. Peace remains heartbreakingly out of reach, but the resilience of Aleppo's people endures, even in the face of unimaginable loss. The conflict has crippled Aleppo's vital infrastructure. Both sides accuse each other of targeting civilian services, escalating tensions. The Khalid Fajr hospital was reportedly struck, endangering patients and staff. Attacks on hospitals leave the wounded with nowhere to turn. The city's airport was shut down after drone strikes, cutting off vital supplies and aid. Daily life has ground to a halt. Water, electricity, and medical care are scarce. The destruction of roads and buildings will take years to repair. Each blow to infrastructure deepens the humanitarian crisis. For Aleppo's residents, survival grows harder by the day. The war's scars will linger long after the fighting ends. Recovery seems a distant hope. On January 10th, a drone struck the Aleppo Governorate building just after a news conference. The explosion sent shockwaves through the city, proving nowhere was safe, not even government headquarters. The government blamed the SDF, calling it terrorism and justifying their crackdown. The SDF denied involvement, insisting they avoid civilian targets. Conflicting claims fueled confusion and mistrust. The attack marked a new phase. Modern technology now threatened even symbolic targets. The incident hardened both sides, making compromise even less likely. The city's sense of security was shattered. The path to peace grew even more uncertain. As the army closed in on Sheikh Maqsoud, some SDF fighters, surrounded and desperate, resorted to suicide bombings. The blasts caused no casualties but revealed the depth of fear and mistrust. The SDF denied targeting civilians, insisting they were defending their community. The government pointed to the bombings and drone attack as proof of SDF extremism. Each side accused the other of brutality, fueling an information war. For ordinary people, the truth was hard to find amid propaganda and fear. The conflict's bitterness deepened, making dialogue seem impossible. Desperation and denial now defined the battle for Aleppo. The city's wounds grew deeper with every accusation. Peace seemed further away than ever. The world quickly took notice of Aleppo's escalating crisis. The U.S. sent its envoy to Damascus, urging an immediate ceasefire and warning of wider instability. Jordan offered to mediate, proposing a peaceful withdrawal of Kurdish fighters. International pressure mounted on both sides to halt the violence. The fear-renewed fighting could ignite a broader war and undo fragile progress. These diplomatic efforts offered a glimmer of hope. But deep mistrust and recent bloodshed made compromise elusive. The fate of Aleppo and Syria now hinged on whether leaders would choose negotiation over more bloodshed. The world watched, hoping for peace. By January 11th, the Syrian army controlled Akrafie and Bani Zaid. Sheikh Maqsoud remained contested. A tense calm settled, but fear lingered. Violence could erupt again at any moment. International calls for a ceasefire opened a narrow window for talks. The displaced waited anxiously, desperate to return home. Deep divisions and mistrust made negotiations difficult. Aleppo's people longed for safety and stability after years of war. The city's fate now symbolized Syria's struggle to unite its fractured communities. The challenge: finding a way for all to live together in peace. Aleppo's future may decide the nation's destiny. The hope for peace endures, but the path remains uncertain.